of the way that I perceive the climate as an employee will be influenced by how my leader shows up. Because innovation occurs when people are in a more positive emotional state. What we've got to do is try and shift the culture to a positive strengths-based culture so that then people can perform at their best and then innovation tends to occur. One thing we do know is if a leader plays to their strengths, their team think they're doing a better job. Okay. So I think that's a win-win. I get to play to my strengths, and if you're in my team, you think I'm a better leader. I mean, how good is that? So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is looking after yourself as a leader. It's a bit like put your own oxygen mask on first. Because if you're not getting your eat, sleep, exercise, looking after your well-being, etc., you're probably making poor choices.
What is mindfulness?
Look, different people have different views, and I'm not going to profess to be a Buddhist expert. I think mindfulness has its practices in some ancient traditions, which is fabulous, and then it's been, for want of a better word, westernized, if you like, or scientifically validated, because in the Western world everybody wants the science behind it to prove that it really works. But I think for me, in a more modern day and age, it's the Jon Kabat-Zinn sort of definition of paying attention on purpose, non-judgmentally. It's just being able to focus our mind. Now, most of the stuff that I do is neuroscience-based. So everything, all of our programs, whether it's wellbeing, culture, leadership, etc., are all based on neuroscience. And for me, I'm most interested in what happens to my brain when I practice mindfulness. A lot of people do it from a relaxation or a, what does it do for my body or as part of my yoga rituals or whatever. For me, it's about training my brain. The relaxation and the stillness are one thing, but it's the clarity, the focus, the paying attention to what I want my brain to focus it on. Am I great at mindfulness? No, I do little bits of it, but I have lots of other strategies that I use that keep my well-being up. Whereas some people, mindfulness is their absolute go-to strategy. And that's cool. Everybody's different.
So what are some of your personal strategies that you use, if you don't mind sharing?
Of course. I write a journal every night. Sometimes it's as small as what are the 3 best things that have happened today, or 3 things I'm grateful for. Sometimes if it's been a particularly emotional day, it's 20 pages of ranting or something of what's going on. There's so much research on the power of expressive writing and journaling that I can't not use it. Because if you have had an emotional issue or problem or whatever, getting it out on paper is beneficial. So I use that. I have used forgiveness letters in the past. So if I feel that I've been upset by something that's happened, I'll write a forgiveness letter and then bin it or burn it or whatever I do a lot from a physiological perspective. So as well as the eat, sleep, exercise, I try and make sure I get my 7 hours sleep. I try and do exercise every day. I try and eat well. Don't always happen with the amount of travel that I do, but there's some sort of fundamentals. But I also do a lot of physiological stuff. So I'm well aware that how I feel influences my physiology. So I want to think about how am I holding myself? How am I sitting? How am I standing? So when I'm facilitating, I'm making sure that I'm upright, I'm open, everything is working as it should, I'm breathing, I'm, all of those sorts of things. And it sounds really sort of simple, but there's so much research on how I hold myself changes how I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all know this. If you're slumped in front of the TV, it flattens the mood. It not depresses us as far as depression, but it makes us more lethargic because our body is like. So I try and pay attention to that. I practice a lot of learned optimism. So learned optimism has a particular sort of framework behind it that involves something called the 3 Ps, personalisation, permanence and pervasiveness. And it's a way of challenging your thinking to flip yourself. So being somebody who occasionally has woken up at 3 a.m. ruminating on a problem, I stuck a A4 piece of paper above my bed with 3 Ps on it so that I could challenge my thinking. So if I'm waking up thinking about something that's happened in my life, I can go, okay, Susan, how permanent is it? Is your whole life really ruined? And sort of almost coach myself around. So I use weird things like that.
I'm going to backtrack a bit and ask, how did you first get started? I mean, you did say you went to that class that was not really emotional intelligence or anything, but it got you started in terms of thinking about your personal values and mission. And from there, how did it happen for you?
Yeah, so I lived in the UK at the time and I wanted to start my own business, but I knew in the UK there would be less opportunity, mainly because I hadn't gone to university. I dropped out of college. I didn't know anybody. My family were not anybody who had contacts. I grew up in a fairly average socioeconomic state, in a small village where they were surrounded by farms and farmers, and so I had no contacts, I had no leverage, I had no, I didn't go to the right school, I didn't even have the decent qualifications. So when I immigrated to Australia, I thought, I think I'll have more of a chance here to do what I want to do. And I found in Australia that whilst I still didn't have any contacts or any qualifications or anything like that, that people were perhaps more likely to give me a chance if I could do a good job. So if I could stand on stage and give a good presentation for free, people in the audience would go, that was really good, and then offer to pay me, because they obviously didn't know I was doing it for free. So I think it was being able to just put myself out there and see what happened. Believing in myself. I think I was at a huge disadvantage compared to so many people I've met since who start up their consulting business and they've come out of a consulting firm. So they leave and then they consult back to their consulting firm. So they've already got their first client. Whereas I arrived in Australia, I had no contacts, again, no network. I hadn't got a degree. I got nothing. But I thought, let's give it a go.
And you decided to start a business, speaking and coaching about I guess
positive psychology and emotional intelligence.
All right.
And I mean, it's worked out really well because since then I have got my degree. So I do have a degree in psychology. I did positive psychology through Harvard University, and I did my master's in neuroscience of leadership. So I've done my qualifications sort of since then. But I think it's also, if you're good, people will come back to you. And, I still get some academics or others that will look down on me because I'm not an academic and I don't have a PhD and things like that. But in general, the reputation we've got is phenomenal. And, the World Congress of Positive Psychology was in Melbourne a couple of weeks back. I know all the people involved. I think we've built a good reputation. There are still some that look down on us, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to focus on those people.
Exactly.
You can always focus on the positive ones, which is quite a lot. It must have been tough starting out. I mean, and it was something that you did straight away, like you didn't try like other things, or this is something that you're naturally drawn to?
Yeah, I did get a real job when I first arrived in Australia. It didn't really suit me. It was meant to be an operations manager role. I decided to rename it complaints manager role. Because that's pretty much what I was dealing with every day. And I kept thinking about start my own business. And then I quit that one because it was terrible. I did a couple of temp jobs and things like that. And then I got a job I loved in learning and development. And it was for Travelland, because I was in the travel industry at the time. And Travelland were owned by Ansett. And when Ansett collapsed, everybody got made redundant, including all of us at Travelland. So I finally found a job I loved after about being here, I think, about 18 months. And then I lost it, because we all got made redundant. So I thought, right, this is the universe giving me a sign that finally I've got to go and do this thing I've been thinking about. So, so I started my own business, really just me. And now we've got 30 people dotted around the world, which is great. And has it been hard? Absolutely. And I feel for people now when there are lots of people that I meet along the way that want to start their own businesses. They come off our diploma of positive psychology and wellbeing and they're like, I'll start my own business. I want to be a facilitator in positive psychology, which is great. And I will encourage and I'll support. And we've had probably at least 20 people that have gone on and done that and are doing very well. But a lot of times people think they can just start their own business and sort of hang their sign up and everybody's going to come running. And I think sometimes people don't realise it's hard work. You have to be good at it and you have to work hard. And yes, we all hear the stories of somebody who via social media gets discovered and then they're all of a sudden a multimillionaire. But for most people, there's a lot of hard work that you don't hear about before they get discovered. Same as we hear about actors and actresses that get, the role that, sort of makes them a big name. But you don't hear about the 300 auditions they've gone to beforehand. So I think, yes, it was really hard initially. Yes, I thought about giving up on many occasions. There was actually one particular day when I was on the bus. We used to live in Sydney over on the North Shore. I was on the bus heading home, going over the bridge, and I was just feeling, I'd just come from a meeting and I'm like, I'm never going to get that work. I'm too young, I'm female. It was with somebody, a gentleman who was your typical CEO style of your white middle-aged, guy, and I'm like, I'm never going to win that. It's never going to work. And I was sort of feeling, oh, this is never going to happen. And we have these cards called Inspire Action cards that I developed. It was the first product we developed. And so I pulled them out of my bag and I'm sitting there and I'm choosing an image from the cards of how I felt. And I'm looking through them and I've picked an image that looked particularly miserable and grumpy. And I turned it over and the quote on the back was, most people give up just as they're about to succeed. And it's like, all right, come on, keep going. And I've actually still got that card in my drawer, my desk drawer, 17 years later or 15 years later. But yeah, there's absolutely days when not so many now, but in the early days where I thought, this is too hard. And I remember in my first year, I got so excited when the ATO sent me a check for $13,000 back at the end of the financial year. They were giving me all my tax back and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Until I realised that meant I'd earned no money. And so it's like, okay, you do actually want to pay tax to an extent because it proves you've actually earned something. So I think that it's been an interesting journey. Would I change it? Absolutely not. And I love where we're at now. I love what I see my team do every day. I love the difference that we make. I would get emails almost every day in my inbox from participants off various programs who've said, this has changed my life. And that's pretty cool.
And you mentioned something interesting just now, that the universe was giving you a sign. Do you believe in that?
I don't know. I believe in the science that human beings make meaning, and making meaning helps us. We have a natural inclination to make meaning, whether it's something big like a natural disaster occurs and we make meaning in it, whether we make it through some sort of religious entity, as in it was God telling us something, or whether we make it through this was meant to bring us together as a community, or whatever we make meaning in small things. Think of all the weird superstitions we have of, things you see or colours or what they mean. A black cat. I don't know why black cats suddenly became bad luck for people. But we make meaning in lots of things. And if you look at the science, there's a guy called Mike Steger who's done a lot of study on this, of we make meaning anyway. My job is, for me in my life and to help other people, is how do you make meaning in a positive way? Because I can make it in a negative way of you and I work together and I walk past your desk in the morning and you don't look up and smile when I say hello. And I go, oh God, what have I done? And I make meaning in the fact that you're upset about something that I did in the meeting yesterday. For all I know, you just didn't hear me and you're busy getting on with things. So we often make meaning in a negative way about what people meant by an email or, those sorts of things. I figure I'll make meaning in a positive way. So yeah, maybe the universe was giving me a sign. Maybe there's something in that, but it was me going, right, this is the motivation I need to keep going. So thinking about how you want to show up from an emotional perspective, because how I show up here today is going to affect our conversation. And sometimes with forgiveness it's not always about forgiving other people. Sometimes we need to be nice to ourselves and stop beating ourselves up.